Before we start discussion and pondering over the verse 2 of Ashtavakra Geeta, let us feel and experience our unity with the whole. In response to the question asked by the seeker, Master answers the question. The question is, how we attain liberation, how we attain non-attachment, peace, happiness. Now, in this question, to this response to this question, Master gives the answer by saying, you will be liberated if you consider the desires of senses, the pleasures of sense objects as poison and forgiveness, simplicity, compassion, truth as nectar. Now, in this literature, the answers to the questions of seeker has been tried on different levels. Some answers are answered on ego level, and some answers are answered on being level. This seems to be necessary considering the gradual transition of seeker from ego level to non-ego or being level. If we see the question asked by the seeker, we will see that the seeker is asking the question using the words like attain. How can I attain liberation? How can I attain non-attachment? Here, the mental state of the seeker reflects the liberation and non-attachment as some objects, some concepts which he wants to possess. So considering the psyche, current psyche of the seeker, the master has to explain or answer the question. In different ways, and this is how the Astavakra Geeta proceeds. All the verses coming henceforth are the answers to these questions, and the answers are given considering the different possible mental states of the seeker. So in this verse, the answer given by the master is given considering the mental state of seeker, which is more prominently manifesting in terms of ego, and which talks about the objects and attainment of those objects. May it be liberation, may it be peace, may it be freedom, may it be non-attachment. So, in the first part of the answer of this verse, Master answers, you will get liberation if you consider desires of senses or sensual pleasures as poison. Here, to give an example, taste, we'll take the example of taste senses. We eat food for the survival of the body. But if we eat it in terms of sensual pleasures as taste, to satisfy the sensual pleasures in terms of tastes, naturally, after a limit, the food will act as poison. This is one of the example. We can similarly consider or apply this to all senses. In the second part, the Master says, and if you consider forgiveness, compassion, truth as nectar, in fact, there we can see so many literatures. There is just preaching, do this and don't do that, do's and don'ts. And the speciality of this literature is that it is not just a preaching, it is the solution to overall problem. So this verse, even if it slightly seems to be preaching, it is not. It is an answer to the question considering the psyche of seeker more dominantly as ego. And if we see it, look at it as preaching, we'll see it as preaching. Like if we say we have to avoid sense pleasures and sense desires, this is one do. And if you say we should forgive, we should be compassionate, we should love truth. If you make all these statements in terms of preaching, we will see that as an ego, if we try all this, we will fail. As an ego, if we try to be truthful, there will be so many conflicts. If we try to forgive, again there will be so many conflicts. Therefore, in the subsequent verses, slowly, the Master is explaining the way to be liberated, the way to be non-attached, not to attain the liberation or not to attain non-attachment. When we say attain, again we are in the loop of egoic domination, which will not be loosened. It will be more and more tight if we try hard and hard. for any preaching to achieve. Therefore, for time being, the Master says, you can attain liberation, non-attachment, provided you shun the objects of sense pleasures, sense desires, and practice forgiveness, practice truth. As we have seen earlier, let us assume we try to implement this answer directly as a preaching. What will happen? If we try to be liberated as an ego, we are conceptualizing the liberation and we are trying to achieve that ego state. We are trying to shift from one ego level to another ego level. We are trying to shift from one identity to another identity. Whereas our final aim is to be free from all identities. Our final aim is to exit from the continuous and vicious cycle of shifting from one identity to another identity in an attempt to be happy. We cannot attain liberation. We can be liberated. We cannot attain happiness. We can be happy. What is the difference between these two seemingly similar statements? We will see this in the subsequent verses. Thank you.